Hi guys, I'm David with Media Unlocked. Today I'm going to be showing you my workflow for editing pictures. Starting off with putting the SD card in and how I catalog my pictures, all the way to how I do pre-editing, then actual editing, and then any extra editing I'm actually going to need after that. There are four programs that I tend to use the most. They are Lightroom, Photoshop, Portrait Professional, and then Photo Matrix, which I do for my HDR photos. Mostly I stick with Lightroom and Photoshop. So what we're going to start off doing here is I've got my SD card, and I've got it set up to my computer, as you guys can see. And we're going to go into the SD card, and we're going to... Now, in this, when I did this shot, I did RAW files and I did JPEG files. For time-wise, we're gonna drag these JPEG files on off. Now, all these JPEG files were files from one of my 31-day photos. This month of December, I'm actually doing a photo per day for 31 days, and this was looks like this was day number 13 here. So then, once I'm done with that, I have a separate hard drive where I put all my photos in. It's called I just call it Picture 1. So all my pictures are in there, and then I go into the year. So this was done in 2012. So I'll go into 2012. Now, if I'm doing something for Media Unlocked, I have a separate filing system there, and I'm doing something for DAVIDDIMAGE, which, in a manner of speaking, some of these photos are pretty good, so I just threw them in my DAVIDDIMAGE set. So DAVIDDIMAGE. Now, as you can see, I've cataloged them by date, the day that I actually shoot them. I started the 31-day photo challenge on the 1st of December. So all my photos are going into a RAW file right here, and I'm throwing all the RAW files of each day into here, and it's going to just accumulate. Now, if I'm doing just a basic shoot, like I recently went to the gun range with my dad and I snapped some shots, that would be cataloged, and it's very simple. I have a RAW file and an edited file. So all my RAW files go into here, and then once I'm done editing them, they'll go into my edited file. Or like I have a customer that I worked through the whole year, right here, and he started working with him on the 18th of May. And then within that file, I've actually broken down the different days of each time, because I've been working for this clothing company pretty much for the last 6 months. So every time I do a new photo shoot for them, I break it down by the actual day that I shot it, and then I put edited or raw. I've kind of switched that system up a little bit to where it's just the day that I shot it, and then within that day, it's going to be edited and raw photos. Photos will be in there. So I find the easiest way to catalog your photos is to throw a date on there, the day you shot it, then throw a second folder in there, which is a raw folder where all your raw files, go in there, and then on top of that, all the edited files out of those raw files. I find that to be the easiest workflow in keeping up with my photos. So once I've dragged and dropped, like I just copied those photos over, I would go on and paste them into here, but I've already got them in here, so I'm not going to paste them in. So once I've pasted the photos in, I actually just exit out of this, and I'm going to open up Lightroom. So once Lightroom opens up, and we'll expand it just a tad bit here. Once Lightroom opens up, I'm going to go down here just where it says Import. So once that is done, I'm going to go into Pictures. And this is going to be all your hard drives or any media, anything that's connected to the computer that could potentially have photos and stuff on it will all be over here to your left. So then we'll go to 2012. We will go to, and right now it's looking at what's on my card. So you could directly import off into the card. It's connected to, as you can see up here, it's connected to my card, but I've already moved my pictures over. So I want to pull them specifically out of a folder. DAVIDDIMAGE, and then there's my 31-day photo challenge. And then RAW. Okay, so what it's going to do is going to highlight all the photos. Once it's gone through. So these are all the photos I've taken. As you can see. Now, I'm going to uncheck all. And the photos that I had that I just would have copied in there are, let's see where they're at here. they're all right here. So if I want that photo in there, you just check mark the photos that you want. So let's say I want this Tamron photo in here. I want to pull in this macro photo I did. Let's say those are the ones I shot that day. Then I would click import. Once I've imported the photos, this screen will exit, which will cancel out of it because I'm not going to import actual photos right now. And then you'd go over to make sure you're up at library, and then we'll go into 31-day photo challenge, raw, and then all my raw photos from that 31-day photo challenge are going to be right here. And these would have been the photos that I would have imported. So once that is done, what I do is, I guess we could pick any random photo. Like, some of these are really good, some of them aren't. So I kind of go through them and pick out which ones I want to edit. Don't really like a lot of the shots I did that night. So we're going to jump over to another raw file. Here's a shot I did where it was pitch black outside, and I used a flash and I put it on bulb, and I was trying to make it look somewhat like daylight for fun, for practice. But let's go to this photo. So this is a photo I did. Let's see here on day 15 of my 31-day photo challenge of a friend of mine that I work with. And so let's say I want to do some editing on him. I can click over here on develop. And then when you click on develop, you can do your basic pre-editing. Now, the color temperature is pretty good, but what if it was not so good? What if it was taken like this? It was a little warm. So I want to cool it down just a little bit. I can go in here and bring the color temperature down. Some people may say that's a little too blue. I kind of would think, so we want to go up just a tad bit. Now that's a little too warm, and you got to get it just right. I'm kind of picky on getting my color temperature right. I feel like that's a pretty comfortable color temperature there. You can mess around with your blacks, which is going to make most things that are darker. So let's see, probably make his hair. If you're going to notice, his hair gets a lot darker, and some of his features, the shadows really come out. So we're gonna keep that black down just a tad bit. You got fill light if you needed more light within the photo, but it kind of gives it a weird look, especially when you don't need it. And I really don't need any fill light in this shot. And then you got recovery, which it will try to recover and try to give you a proper exposure sometimes. But I'm happy with the way it looks now. You have brightness and contrast and some of your basic. Clarity is pretty nice. So if you pop your clarity up, it's like a super sharpen kind of, in a manner of speaking. And you know, it doesn't look too bad. So we'll leave the clarity up here. And then if you want to get into more details, you have a lot more settings. You have sharpening, noise reduction, lens correction, effects. So there's a lot of different things you can do. I don't really mess with any of these. I don't really have time. Everything I mess with really starts from here and stops right here at highlights, and or stops right here at the clarity settings, vibrance and saturation. So that's about all I use. Is just these right here. Other than that, I might do a little bit of cropping, which you can crop here if I wanted to crop in the photo. But you really can't do any in-depth editing, in my opinion, in Lightroom. You can just do real basic stuff. And you do have a lot more options. Every once in a while, I'll mess around with these options. But I just want to do real basic editing because I'm going to do my major editing in Photoshop. So once I'm done with that, if you have Photoshop, you can just right-click on the photo, edit in, and I'm going to edit in Photoshop CS6. Now going back to Lightroom real quick, there are some cool features about Lightroom that you can do. If you only like having editable photos like this, I would never edit this photo. This is actually a photo I should be in the trash. So if you don't like having those in your raw folder and you want to just have in your raw folder just photos that are worth probably editing, you can hit X on this photo. What's going to set it as reject. Now once you've rejected it, what you can do is, you can go through all your raw files once you've imported them all and get rid of all that. You can put the X, reject all the files that you don't like. Like I'm not going to keep this one. I'm not going to keep, none of these really came out that good. It was just kind of fun. I was just testing out to see what happens when you put it on bulb in pitch dark and you use the flash to try to light up your scene. And none of the photos really came out that good at all. So we'll go on and reject like all of these because really I have no use for any of them. So I've rejected them all. Then you can go into photo and delete rejected photos. Now you can remove them from Lightroom, which I don't really like to do because especially if you put more files within that folder, you're going to end up importing. You could end up accidentally importing them again. I just delete them from the disk. If I know I'm never going to use them, I have no use for them, they're just gone. So I'm going to delete those completely, all for good. So now those photos are completely gone. They are probably, I don't know if it throws it in my trash can or not. Let's see here. I've never looked. If it'll let me open up my trash can here. Well, computer's freezing up. Well, there we go. So I'm guessing the photos went into here. Yeah, they're up here. And then you just right click and then empty your trash can and those photos are gone for good now. All right, back to Photoshop. So we right clicked on the photo, we sent it over to Photoshop, and now I can do my final edit in Photoshop. So if I want to go into here, most of the stuff I use in Photoshop is going to be right here. I use a lot of this. Shadows and highlights is a pretty fun thing to mess around with. It can really help out your photo or make it worse. It can go kind of either way, depending on what you're trying to get out of your photo. And sometimes I just mess around with it, not exactly knowing what I want, so I'll just kind of mess around with the settings and see how they look. Some people know specifically what they want when they play around with it, but I love to play around with just random things in Photoshop because you never know what you can find, what you can do in Photoshop, as far as different settings and stuff. So I could mess around with. That's one of the ones I like to do is shadow and highlights. When I feel like a picture is missing something, I'll throw it in shadow and highlights and mess around with it, see if that gives me the look I'm looking for. I use a lot of brightness and contrast, levels, some curves, hue and saturation, vibrance, and then color balance, depending on if I need to recolor, as far as getting the balance, really, as it says, color balance, as far as getting my color balance correct. You have like an auto tone, auto contrast, auto color. I hardly ever use those. So most everything I do is going to be right here within this. Most people will tell you it's probably wise when you're editing a picture, just go on and throw it in down here and open up a second layer. So this is your layers, and then you have other different things you can use here that you can just, and it brings up those items as well. So you can edit them right off here if you're wanting to do stuff with levels or anything like that. So I'm pretty bad about using layers, so I don't use them a lot unless it's going to be a real in-depth photo. But if it's a real basic edit like this, to me it's kind of basic. I'm going to go in and get rid of his forehead lines, try to work on his face a little bit, but there's not a lot that can be done here as far as his face is concerned without making it look too fake. So I would just do the basic editing, and then that would be that. But some people like to add in a layer before they do the editing and save a Photoshop version of it and save a JPEG version of it, which is smart if it's a paid job. I tend to lean towards that system when I'm getting paid to do the job. So I always have a backup in a Photoshop file where I can go in and fix any major edits. So and then the last thing I really like to do is I like to do a sharpen sometimes. I like a smart sharpen, but you don't want to over sharpen your photo. So we could sharpen it big time, and that didn't really over sharpen it, so that wasn't too bad. But you can over sharpen your photo and make it look really fake as well. So let's say I'm done with this photo, it looks nice. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do File, and I'm going to do a Save As. And like I said, you pick your file format. I usually just outsource it as a JPEG. Then we'd go out here, and then I would set up the second file system, the second file system was to be edited. You already have a raw file system, so now you want to add in a second one, so you can go up here and click Create New Folder, and then add in Edited Folder, and then all the edited photos from my 31-day photo challenge is all in here, and I would just save it into there. As you saw back there, if I was doing an HDR photo, I have a separate HDR system, and then I would put my HDR stuff within here. So that is my workflow. If I was going to do an HDR photo, I would actually start off with Photo Matrix and then migrate into Photoshop when I was done with Photo Matrix. So hopefully this helps you guys out. This is a really good workflow. At least I find it to be very, very good workflow. Especially, it really just works with Lightroom and Photoshop are the main two components of most of my editing. So you guys have a wonderful day. I know this was a kind of a long workflow, but I really wanted to kind of show you in depth of my workflow and how I keep up with my photos. And I find that Lightroom really, Lightroom and Photoshop working together is really a great workflow, and I get everything I need out of it as far as my editing is concerned most of the time. So you guys have a wonderful day. Check us out on Facebook at DavidDImages and as well at Twitter at Media Unlocked. And I'll catch you next time.